everyone. Welcome to HERPath, the podcast for busy women looking for purpose, health, and happiness. We are so excited to kick off this podcast with you. We are 4 life coaches. We are busy career women who have families and busy, thoughtful careers. And each week we will be tackling different topics that are important to women and providing a wide array of perspectives. We will give you advice, we will give you tips, we will share our stories, and we will come at it from all of our different specialties. We know that you're going to find this time thoughtful, insightful, and once you get to know us, very entertaining. So let me introduce you to my wonderful co-hosts. So first up, we have Beth, who is a wellness coach finding freedom through food.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you.
And we have Gabby, who is a weight loss coach for women.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
And Nancy, who's a transformational coach specializing in menopause.
Nice to see everyone.
And my name is Elise. I am a women's purposeful life coach, as well as a career and executive coach. Thank you for being with us today. Let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. So happy to be here with everyone today and with our lovely coaches. And our topic for this week revolves around self-care. Hopefully you all got a chance to listen to our wellness podcast. If you haven't, I really encourage you to do so. There's going to be some overlap to what we're going to delve into today. And I wanted to get into really just the basics of what self-care really means to me. And before, if you would have asked me in my younger days, meaning when I was in my 20s, what self-care was, I envisioned things like getting my nails done. I did used to get my nails done. And now looking back, I can't believe I used to do that. I mean, for me, it was just not a practical thing to do. I'd walk around a day after getting my nails done and I'd already have one cracked nail, one fell off, and I would never repaint them. It was terrible. But anyways, at that time, I thought getting my nails done was self-care. I thought getting my hair, dyed and painted was self-care. I mean, it was a lot of superficial things that I thought were, revolved around self-care. Now that I've had some kind of years under my belt, I've really stripped down for me self-care to really more basic things. And I want to share those with you and have a discussion with our coaches today to kind of revolves around some of those basic things. And these are intentional actions that, if they're not tended to, can really affect our daily ability to function both physically and mentally. And I can divide it into 2 big categories of self-care. 3 categories really. Physical category for self-care, a emotional category for self-care, and then more of a social category for self-care. Under the physical part of self-care, 3 things that are really, really important, and they're very basic. And let me tell you, they're basic, but absolutely important. Sleep, 1. Nutrition, 2. Exercise, 3. And I hope that doesn't disappoint anyone who's listening to this self-care part. But let me tell you, these 3 aspects of your physical life can really have an impact on how you experience things on a regular basis. They affect your emotional part of life, as well as physically health. Super important to manage your sleep. That's something that I hear a lot of people struggle with also, is sleep. Some of it is non-intentional because now we have so much stimulation when it comes to like television, when it comes to phone, when it comes to feeling like you need to unwind at the end of the day and just staying up later doing useless things. There are studies that show that people who sleep less than 6 hours a night consistently actually have a shorter lifespan, are more sick, and have more health problems in the long term. So sleep is something that is actually absolutely necessary for life. People who go prolonged periods of sleeping and without sleeping, and I'm meaning like somebody who has like some kind of mood disorder or an actual sleep disorder and goes nights consecutively without sleeping, have increased risk of psychotic breakdowns, heart problems. I've seen people have arrhythmias from not getting good sleep. So sleep is something that's absolutely necessary for our health. And from what I hear from a lot of my patients, I'm a family medicine doctor. And so from a lot of my patients, sometimes that's something that is very, very much neglected. When you sleep, your body actually stores memories, heals. So when you're sleeping, all of the stress that has happened physically in your body during the day, and you're sleeping and resting, your body goes into heal mode, storage mode. So it is absolutely necessary to work on getting some quality sleep or quality rest. The next part I wanted to touch on is your nutrition. And I think a lot of us may not really think about nutrition in that way. We just think I need to eat something. And so, I go ahead and eat. I should eat breakfast. I should eat lunch. I should have a snack. I'm hungry. I should eat, without really intentionally thinking about the things that we're putting into our body. I want to encourage people to think about food as medicine for your body, food as an important building block that becomes part of you. It actually becomes part of your body, and the things that we put in our body can affect our energy. It can affect our gut, our digestion. It can affect our hormones and the way those function over time. You can see sometimes in our skin some side effects of poor choices that we make in our food. It affects our weight. It can definitely affect our sleep as well, our energy. So thinking about our food and nutrition in a way that we look at it as what does it do for me and how does it affect my body? And again, I keep going back to when I was younger, looking back on those days and reflecting, like I never thought about what I ate or when I ate. Sometimes I'd go a long time without eating and I'd even think about it. And other times, it would be whatever was the most convenient. I know when I was like in middle school, I think I would have chips and a Coke for lunch like every day without even thinking about what this is doing for me, like in my brain and my body and in the long term. But in my 20s, I probably overdid alcohol. And I know I overdid fast food and overdid, a lot of treats and sweets. And now that I'm, in my late 40s, I'm definitely feeling the effects of all of those decisions that I've made over time. And I'm definitely a lot more cognizant of when I eat this, I don't feel good. So I really work on avoiding those things that give me a negative health side effect or even mental fog, fatigue. Really try to avoid some of those things. But it takes thinking about, what is it that I'm actually putting into my body that is causing this effect? There are certain things that I eat that I know overnight I'll gain like 2 to 3 pounds of water weight, and I'll see it like around my eyes, or I'll see it on my fingers, and or heartburn or constipation. I mean, I make a lot of money in primary care, actually, with people coming in with a lot of these symptoms that can be absolutely modified by really being more aware of the things that we're putting into our body, either planning what we put into our body and making an active decision to avoid those things that are making us not feel so good. And the next thing about self-care that I want to touch upon is exercise. Now, I don't mean, doing CrossFit every day or training for a marathon. And some people do that and it's excellent. It's right up their alley. But I'm talking about moving your body and making an intentional plan, or being aware of how often and how you are moving your body. A lot of people who have sedentary jobs, desk jobs, sit all day, suffer from back pain, hip pain, knee pain, foot pain, get tired very easily from simple exertion because they're not used to moving their body, not used to getting their heart rate up in a way that allows the body to handle any vigorous type of activity. And so moving the body is super important. There's a lot of studies that show that even getting some simple exercise can help decrease stress. It helps decrease anxiety. Over the long term for us women, there's something called osteoporosis, which is the brittle bones that can increase the risk of getting a hip or a back fracture. And if that happens to us when we're older, there's an increased risk of death, like 6 months after having a hip fracture. That's something that can definitely be modified over time with our nutrition and our exercise, with getting some good dense bones by doing some light weights, and improving the tone and the strength of our muscles. It's very, very important. So those are the big three aspects of self-care that are the physical aspects that can also make a big impact on our emotional sense of well-being, I guess you can put it that way. One of the big emotional aspects, which is way more complicated than what we're going to get to today, but is going to be stress management. Stress is something that we perceive as stressful. So something that might be stressful for me may not be stressful for Beth or Elise or Nancy. And so identifying for you what are your biggest stressors and finding a way to reconcile those stressors, finding a way to continue to function despite those circumstances in your life that you perceive as stressors. And only you can figure out what those things are for you. Some simple things that can help with stress management are time management. For a lot of us, it's like, I don't have enough time. I can't get all the things done. There's too many things and not enough hours. We all have the same 24 hours a day. We all do. And there are techniques out there that really help organize our sense of time in a way that we can give ourselves a structure and we can fit the things that are very important to us on a type of, at least loves this. I already see her nodding her head, and I'm going towards like the Monday hour one is like a wonderful, mechanism that I know I've been resistant to, and I still can be sometimes, where those things that are super, you get all the things that you need to get done out. You get them all out on paper. You list them all out, and you literally put them on your calendar. You put them on there, give them a time slot. So you give yourself a time limit to get these things done, whether you think you can do it that time limit or not. You put it on there, and you hold yourself accountable to follow through with those things. And so it's been super powerful. Yes.
And Gabby, I love a good Monday hour one. It is my bread and butter. But one of the most important parts of a Monday hour one is you put your self-care and your personal needs on your calendar first. Before the work, before the kids, before the in-laws, before the dog, whatever. You put yourself on there first so that you
because there is time for all of that on there.
Yeah.
We have the time, but we don't make the time, or we don't structure our time, and we waste time. And time is like the most precious thing because you never get that back. Once the time is gone, you don't get it back.
It's a great way to set that intention. For me, self-care is about the intention. And I don't care if it's a bath. I don't care if it's committing to moving my body for 15 minutes every day. It's that intention. So whatever we can do to reinforce that intention, hardwire that, I think that is the key.
Right. And if that intentional act of reducing your stress actually gives you a positive outcome and you are proud of that you did that, it feels good to do that, then that is great for you. Because I can also say, so the way I relieve my stress when I get home is I eat a bag of Doritos and 3 margaritas, and that's what I do to get stressed out. But then if I'm like tummy upset, hungover, bloated, tired, is that really a good way for me to be? Is that really stress relieving for me? Or is that, a unhealthy coping mechanism that, in the moment maybe helps me feel good, or like a false pleasure or a false way of handling my stress that afterwards I beat myself up for doing that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, right. That is something that only we can figure out for ourselves.
And that, one of the things that when I was thinking about this topic, that I was thinking about is making sure that we don't mistake buffering for self-care. So buffering are those things that we do to escape from the world that we're living in that don't necessarily add value, right? So for me, I love audiobooks. And I used to think of audiobooks as, well, that's my self-care. I'm taking time for myself. And I can multitask while I listen to them. But over time and during very stressful situations, I find that I actually have to temper myself with how much audiobook listening I do, because I can use it as an escape, and it's not really self-care at that point. It's buffering. So I think, just to your point, am I being destructive with my 3 margaritas and my bag of Doritos? Am I not either facing what's happening, being intentional about self-care by listening to 6 hours of audiobooks when I could have been working or exercising or doing all the other things? It's a great
Yeah. And then to identify, so how can I figure out what things are, or situations or thoughts are really stressing me out? Sometimes journaling and can be a helpful tool, like journaling either in the sense of Dear Diary and, kind of writing, about the occurrences of the day, or your whether past experiences, your future goals, or something simple as brain dumping or thought downloading, can be a pretty surprising way to identify thoughts that may be stress provoking. I hadn't learned about thought downloading or brain dumping. It's a pretty recent thing for me to learn, and it's amazing what you can really learn about yourself when you non-judgmentally allow yourself to identify all of the things that are floating around in your head at that moment in time. And I don't know if any of you ladies want to comment on the process downloading and how that works, but my understanding of how I've learned about it is basically you give yourself an allotted amount of time, and it doesn't have to be that long, maybe like 2 minutes or 5 minutes. You get your journal. It could be old pen and paper, or if you want to type it out, that's great. But I think studies show that there is something about actual pen and paper writing things down that it triggers certain neural pathways in your brain that can more permanently affect your thinking. But anyways, you set your pen down on your paper, and you don't lift that pen up for those 5 minutes. Everything that goes through your mind, no matter how minute, how insignificant, how alarming, how crazy it may seem to you, you just get it all out, all out, all out, all out. And then you allow yourself to, without judgment, to look at it and identify, like, wow, I didn't realize that I was stressing about, how I hate my children, and, I wish they had never been born. And without judgment, and think about, is this something that is useful for me to really be thinking? Is it even true? Like, why is it floating around in my brain? Do I need to keep it there? Do I need to do some work around that? So thought only could be an amazing way to reflect on the things that are just bouncing around my head, causing me distress. And then the last aspect would be the social aspect of self-care, which would be connections. Either social connections with friends or with family. Sometimes it may even mean disconnecting with people who are not who you have challenges with in your life, and removing yourself or distancing yourself from, those individuals may actually improve your self-care. I don't know. So those are my tips on, identifying what self-care is. They're very, very basic, but I'd love to get our wonderful coach's feedback.
I'll jump in. Like you, Gabby, I used to think self care was all about getting manicures and pedicures and getting my hair done. The older I've gotten, the more I realize it's so much more than that. I feel like it's really standing up for yourself and using your voice to state what you believe in. It's about having healthy boundaries. For me, you talked about it a little bit. It was about detoxing people pleasing behaviors in me and getting people out of my life that really didn't support me. I know on social media, they give us the ability to delete and block, which I think you can totally do that in your life. And for me, it's about feeling comfortable within yourself to say no without an explanation. I think manis and petties are nice, but the real deeper self care is really living in integrity with who you are. And that means taking the time to really get to know yourself. The thought dumps are great. One of the questions I typically ask my clients is around their self inner talk. I always say, do you talk to yourself like you talk to your children or your best friend? Most people just look at me and they just shake their head. Because I feel like self compassion really encourages self care, because you're more likely to engage in activities that nourish your body, such as exercise and eating good foods, because you value and you respect yourself. Watching TV or indulging in comfort food can be legitimate forms of self care, yet excessive indulgence can turn into escapism or buffering, like we talked about, to avoid underlying issues rather than addressing them. It can mask as self care if you're not tuned into yourself. And I think self care can also be doing the hard things, like having the difficult conversation, going to the gym when you don't feel like it, passing up sweets at the party or a buffet, not having the second glass of wine. I think living from your future self and asking yourself, what would my future self be proud of? I think that can really help you get focused on what it takes to care for you. Because I think the real gift is when you're able to give the world the best of you, the best, well rested, well nourished version of you.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
Love it.
All right. I'm going to piggyback on that, Nancy. Thank you for sharing. I think the basics, like Gabby was talking about, we're going to, of self-care, focusing on the physical of, eat, sleep, and movement. The idea going back to stress management and time management and putting our self-care as a priority into our calendaring system is like that old an analogy of putting your oxygen mask on before putting it on other people. We cannot give from an empty cup. And self-care looks different for most people, but I think the basics, like you shared, the eat, the sleep, and I call the train, like movement, eat, sleep, and train. If you can get those dialed in, all those other pieces tend to kind of fall into place a little bit more easily.
Can I piggyback on that, Beth? Because I think what you brought up was so important, and it reminded me of what happened. So in my world, I am in the sandwich generation. So I have busy kids to take care of, and now I have parents and in-laws to take care of. And we had some events with a family member who has a debilitating chronic illness. And it really became clear to me that I would need to be one of their primary support people as they move through this disease. And for the first time, getting to your point, Beth, as I was having the conversations with them and spending the time with them, when I came home that night, I said, okay, so this is a must do in my world, and it's going to cause stress, and it's going to cause grief, and it's going to be painful to watch and painful to support, but I need to do it. How do I self-care during this time? What do I need to do for myself so I can be whole, so I can be present, so I can be cared for? Because to your point, if I'm going to be a caretaker for someone who's going to get sicker and sicker and sicker, I have to take care of myself first. Otherwise, I won't have the energy, I won't have the emotional fortitude, or any of that to do that, to be on that journey with them. So I love that reminder of the oxygen mask, because I think we as women, working women with kids and parents and the sandwich generation, we forget about that. We just dive into help. It was the first time for me that I'd ever stopped and really thought about, okay, what am I going to need to do for me in order to help him? So I absolutely love that. And I would add in for emotional, the whole thought download is great, but coaching is really great too. You three have been my coaches and have been phenomenal. And I now have another coach that I'm working with. And I think coaching is a huge part of emotional self-care. How do we manage our minds? How do we work through the things that come through our minds that lead to feelings and actions and results? How do we create that space for ourselves where we can be honest with ourselves? Because that's hard. And then have somebody guide us through the process of turning around those pieces for us, or with us, not for us.
Yes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like you are paying, a professional coach. I mean, they're going back to the social connections, there are people in our life who can hold space for us and help bring out from within the our strengths and help us identify them so that we can really take accountability for ourselves, and move through life in a way that we understand that taking care of ourselves is not a selfish thing, and all of the other things will fall into place when we are aware of ourselves physically and emotionally. Any other input for our self-care topic today? It's a lot, and definitely a lot more than we could cover in these 30 minutes. And as we move on in this series, we're going to touch upon a lot more topics that are pertinent to our mental, physical, emotional, and social aspects of self-care and well-being.
And I think we'll revisit, well-being, wellness, self-care when we talk about stress management, and how to live in a world where there's multiple stressors. I think we're going to keep coming back to these over and over again. And I love the diversity in the thoughts that the four of us have had when it comes to self-care, everything from the tactical to the intentional to the anticipatory. I'm grateful for this group to be able to share where each of us come from on this.
Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful week and day, month. Until next time.
Hey, one more thing before we leave. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are certified professional coaches, but this broadcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice. Okay, thanks for listening. See you next week.